The morning sun cast a golden glow over Kensington Palace as Catherine Middleton, now the Duchess of Cambridge, stood before her mirror, adjusting her navy blue dress. Her hands trembled slightly, not from nervousness about the cameras that would soon capture her every move, but from the overwhelming joy of what this day represented. Today marked their first major public appearance as a complete family of 5, and the world was waiting. Prince William entered the room, his military uniform perfectly pressed, carrying 3-year-old Princess Charlotte, who was giggling at something her father had whispered in her ear. The sight of them together always made Kate's heart skip a beat. Even after years of marriage, she still marveled at how naturally William had taken to fatherhood, how his stern public persona melted away when he was with their children. "Are the boys ready?" Kate asked, smoothing down Charlotte's yellow dress that had been specially chosen for the occasion. The little princess had insisted on wearing her favorite shoes, bright red with tiny bows, despite the royal protocol team's gentle suggestions for more traditional footwear. "George is practicing his wave in the nursery," William chuckled. "And Louis is trying to convince his nanny that he's old enough to carry the ceremonial flowers himself." The family was preparing for the opening ceremony of a new children's hospital that Kate had championed for the past 2 years. It was a cause close to her heart, having spent countless hours visiting sick children and understanding the desperate need for better pediatric facilities. What made this day even more special was that it would be the first time all 3 Cambridge children would participate in an official royal engagement together. 9-year-old Prince George had been preparing, for weeks, studying the notes his father had written about proper royal protocol. The young prince took his responsibilities seriously, often reminding his siblings about the importance of representing the royal family with dignity. His tutor had noticed how George's confidence had grown tremendously over the past year, transforming from a shy boy into a poised young gentleman who could handle public attention with remarkable grace. Princess Charlotte, with her mother's determination and her father's charm, had been practicing her curtsy and had memorized the names of all the hospital staff they would meet. She had a natural ability to connect with people, often breaking royal protocol to hug children or hold hands with elderly visitors during their engagements. Her spontaneous warmth had already earned her a special place in the public's heart. Little Prince Louis, barely 2 years old, was still too young to fully understand the significance of their public duties, but his infectious laughter and curious nature made him an instant favorite wherever the family appeared. His tendency to wave at everyone, including security personnel and photographers, had created some of the most endearing moments in recent royal history. As the family gathered in the palace's main hall, Kate couldn't help but reflect on how much their lives had changed since William's proposal on that mountaintop in Kenya all those years ago. She had known that marrying into the royal family would bring unprecedented public scrutiny, but she had never imagined how fulfilling it would be to use their platform to make a real difference in people's lives. The Children's Hospital project had been particularly meaningful to both William and Kate. They had visited dozens of families affected by childhood illnesses, listened to heartbreaking stories, and witnessed incredible courage from both patients and their parents. The new facility would provide state-of-the-art treatment for children from across the country, equipped with the latest medical technology and designed to feel more like a welcoming home than a clinical institution. Their private secretary approached, with the final schedule for the day. The family would first tour the hospital's new pediatric wing, meet with the medical staff, and then participate in the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Afterward, they would spend time with some of the young patients and their families, followed by a reception with the hospital's major donors and supporters. "Remember," William addressed his children as their car pulled up to the entrance, "today is about the brave children who will be helped by this hospital. We're here to celebrate them and show our support." George nodded solemnly, straightening his small blazer. Charlotte clapped her hands excitedly, while Louis babbled happily in his car seat, completely unaware of the hundreds of people waiting outside to catch a glimpse of the royal family. As their convoy approached the hospital, Kate could see the crowds lining the streets. Families with children held handmade signs welcoming them. Medical students from the nearby university had gathered in their scrubs, and local residents had taken time off work to witness this historic moment. The energy was electric, filled with genuine excitement and appreciation for the royal family's commitment to this important cause. The car slowed to a stop and Kate took a deep breath. Through the tinted windows, she could see the flashing cameras of photographers and the eager faces of well-wishers. This was the moment they had all been preparing for, the moment when their private family would once again step into the public eye, carrying with them the hopes and expectations of a nation. William reached over and squeezed her hand. "Ready, darling?" Kate looked back at their 3 children, each one representing the future of the monarchy, each one carrying forward the legacy of service and compassion that had defined the royal family for generations. Charlotte was practicing her wave. George was checking his appearance one final time, and Louis was reaching for his mother with outstretched arms. "We're ready," Kate replied, her voice filled with quiet confidence. The doors would open in moments, and the Cambridge family would step into another chapter of their remarkable journey together, bringing joy, hope, and inspiration to everyone they would meet that day. The moment the car door opened, a wave of cheers erupted from the gathered crowd. Kate stepped out first, her smile radiant as she waved to the hundreds of people who had been waiting for hours to see the royal family. The morning breeze caught her hair perfectly, and the photographers captured what would later become one of the most iconic images of the day. William emerged next, carrying Louis in his arms. The toddler's eyes went wide at the sight of so many people, but instead of being frightened, he began waving enthusiastically with both hands, causing the crowd to laugh and cheer even louder. His natural charisma was already evident, and several people in the front row called out his name affectionately. George stepped out with the composure of someone far beyond his 9 years. He had been practicing his public appearances, and it showed in the way he confidently waved to the crowd while staying close to his parents. The young prince's resemblance to his father was striking, and many in the crowd commented on how he carried himself with the same dignity that William had shown at that age. Charlotte bounded out of the car last, her yellow dress bright against the backdrop of the hospital's modern architecture. She immediately began waving to everyone, her infectious smile lighting up her entire face. When she spotted a group of children near the front of the crowd, she tugged on her mother's hand and pointed excitedly, clearly wanting to go over and meet them. The hospital's chief executive, Dr. Sarah Mitchell, approached the family with a team of senior staff members. She had been working tirelessly for months to ensure that this day would be perfect, knowing how important the royal family's support was for the hospital's future funding and public recognition. "Your Royal Highnesses, welcome to St. Mary's Children's Hospital," Dr. Mitchell said, her voice filled with genuine emotion. "We are so honored to have you here today to officially open our new pediatric wing." Kate immediately warmed to the hospital administrator, appreciating her obvious passion for the work they were doing. "Dr. Mitchell, we've been following the progress of this project for 2 years now. We're absolutely thrilled to see it finally become a reality." As the family began their tour of the new facilities, it became clear that this was more than just a formal royal visit. Kate asked detailed questions about the medical equipment, while William engaged the staff in conversations about their experiences working with young patients. The children, meanwhile, were fascinated by everything they saw, from the colorful murals on the walls to the specially designed play areas that would help young patients cope with their treatments. In the new cancer treatment center, they met 8-year-old Emma Thompson, who had been receiving treatment for leukemia for the past year. Emma had specifically requested to meet Princess Charlotte, having followed the young royal's appearances in the media. When Charlotte saw Emma's bald head covered by a bright pink headscarf, she didn't hesitate to compliment how beautiful it looked. "I love pink too," Charlotte told Emma, sitting down beside her in the treatment room. "My mummy says pink is the color of brave girls." Emma's mother, watching from nearby, began to cry as she witnessed her daughter's face light up with joy. For months, Emma had been feeling self-conscious about her appearance, but Charlotte's genuine acceptance and enthusiasm made her feel like the most beautiful girl in the world. George, meanwhile, had struck up a conversation with 12-year-old James Rodriguez, who was recovering from a complicated surgery. James was initially nervous about meeting a real prince, but George's down-to-earth manner quickly put him at ease. Do you like football? George asked, noticing a Manchester United poster on the wall near James's bed. I love it, James replied. I was on my school team before I got sick. I hope I can play again someday. I'm sure you will, George said with conviction. My dad says that being brave and working hard can help you achieve anything, and you're already being incredibly brave. William watched his son with immense pride. At just 9 years old, George was already showing the empathy and leadership, qualities that would serve him well in his future role. The young prince's ability to connect with people, regardless of their age or circumstances, was truly remarkable. In the neonatal intensive care unit, Kate spent time with premature babies and their exhausted parents. Having experienced the challenges of early parenthood herself, she understood the fears and hopes of these families. She listened intently as doctors explained the advanced technology that was giving these tiny patients the best possible chance at life. Louis, still in his father's arms, seemed particularly fascinated by the incubators and the gentle sounds of the medical equipment. Despite his young age, he was remarkably calm and observant, taking in everything around him with wide, curious eyes. As they moved through the hospital, word spread quickly among the staff and patients that the royal visit was exceeding everyone's expectations. Rather than a brief formal appearance, the Cambridge family was spending genuine time with each person they met, creating memories that would last a lifetime. The hospital's child life specialist, Maria Santos, had organized a special activity in the main playroom where several young patients were waiting. She had been concerned about how the children would react to meeting royalty, but her worries quickly disappeared as she watched the natural interactions unfold. Charlotte immediately joined a group of children who were working on a puzzle while George helped some older kids with a challenging board game. Even Louis, from his father's arms, was pointing at colorful toys and making happy sounds that delighted everyone around him. They're just like regular children, whispered 7-year-old Amy Chen to her mother. Only fancier. The comment made Kate laugh, and she knelt down to Amy's level. We are regular children at heart, she said warmly. We just happen to live in a really big house and have some very important jobs to do. As their tour continued through the research laboratories and family support areas, it became increasingly clear that this hospital represented something truly special. The staff's dedication, the cutting-edge medical facilities, and the family-centered approach to care created an environment where hope flourished even in the most challenging circumstances. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was approaching, but none of the Cambridge family members seemed eager to rush through their interactions with the hospital community. They had found something authentic and meaningful in these connections, something that reminded them why their public service mattered so much. The afternoon sun had reached its peak as the Cambridge family gathered in the hospital's main courtyard for the official ribbon-cutting ceremony. What had started as a formal royal engagement had transformed into something much more meaningful, a genuine celebration of hope and healing that brought together hundreds of people from all walks of life. Kate stood beside the ceremonial ribbon, her navy blue dress now slightly wrinkled from kneeling down to speak with children and sitting on hospital beds to comfort worried parents. She couldn't have cared less about her appearance. The joy on the faces around her was far more important than perfect protocol. William adjusted Louis in his arms as the toddler reached for the golden scissors that would officially open the new pediatric wing. The little prince seemed fascinated by the shiny object, babbling excitedly as the crowd chuckled at his innocent enthusiasm. Several photographers captured the moment, knowing it would become a treasured image for families around the world. George and Charlotte flanked their parents, both children having exceeded everyone's expectations for their behavior and engagement throughout the visit. Charlotte kept waving to specific children she had met earlier, remembering their names and calling out personal messages that made each young patient feel incredibly special. Dr. Mitchell stepped forward to address the crowd, her voice amplified by the sound system that had been set up for the occasion. Behind her, the gleaming windows of the new hospital wing reflected the bright afternoon light, symbolizing the hope and healing that would take place within those walls. Today marks not just the opening of a new building, Dr. Mitchell began, but the beginning of a new chapter in pediatric medicine. This facility represents the collective efforts of thousands of people who believe that every child deserves the very best medical care, surrounded by love, compassion, and hope. The crowd included hospital staff still wearing their scrubs from their shifts, construction workers who had built the facility, local government officials who had supported the project, and dozens of families whose children had already benefited from the hospital's services. Many had tears in their eyes as they reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. Kate was invited to speak next, and she approached the microphone with the natural grace that had made her one of the most beloved members of the royal family. She looked out at the sea of faces, seeing not just a crowd, but individuals whose lives had been touched by childhood illness and who understood the profound importance of this facility. When William and I first learned about the plans for this new pediatric wing, we knew immediately that we wanted to support this incredible project, Kate said, her voice carrying clearly across the courtyard. But spending time here today, meeting the remarkable children, families, and staff, has shown us that this is so much more than a hospital. This is a place where miracles happen every day. She paused, looking directly at some of the young patients, who were watching from wheelchairs and hospital beds that had been brought outside for the ceremony. We have met children today who have shown courage that would humble the bravest adults. We have spoken with families who have faced unimaginable challenges with grace and strength. And we have witnessed medical professionals who dedicate their lives to giving children the chance to grow up healthy and happy. Charlotte tugged on her mother's dress, wanting to add something to the speech. Kate smiled and lifted her daughter up to the microphone. The little princess's voice was clear and confident as she spoke directly to the children in the crowd. "I made lots of new friends today," Charlotte announced, causing a ripple of laughter and applause. "And I promised them that I would come back to play again soon." The spontaneous addition to the formal ceremony perfectly captured the genuine connections that had been formed throughout the day. Several of the young patients began calling out Charlotte's name, and she waved enthusiastically to each one. William then took his turn to address the gathering, his military bearing evident as he spoke about the importance of service and community support. "This hospital represents the very best of human nature," he said. "It shows what we can accomplish when we work together toward a common goal of helping those who need it most." He shifted Louis to his other arm as the toddler had begun reaching toward a cluster of colorful balloons held by children in the crowd. "My family and I have been deeply moved by everything we have experienced here today. The dedication of the medical staff, the bravery of the patients, and the love of the families have reminded us why public service is such a privilege and responsibility." George, inspired by his parents' speeches, raised his hand to indicate that he wanted to say something too. William lifted him up so he could reach the microphone, and the young prince's words surprised everyone with their maturity and thoughtfulness. "I learned today that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared," George said, his voice steady despite the attention of hundreds of people. "It means you do the right thing even when it's hard. All the children I met today are braver than any superhero." The crowd erupted in applause, many wiping away tears at the young prince's profound observation. His words had perfectly captured the spirit of resilience and hope that permeated the hospital environment. As the time came for the actual ribbon cutting, something unexpected happened. Emma Thompson, the 8-year-old cancer patient who had connected so deeply with Charlotte earlier, was wheeled forward in her wheelchair by one of the nurses. "Princess Charlotte," Emma called out, "would you help me cut the ribbon too?" Without hesitation, Charlotte looked up at her mother for permission, then climbed down and walked over to Emma's wheelchair. The two girls stood together, both holding the ceremonial scissors as the crowd watched in complete silence. Kate felt tears welling up in her eyes as she watched her daughter instinctively understand the importance of including Emma in this special moment. It was a lesson in compassion that couldn't be taught in any classroom or royal protocol training. On the count of 3, Charlotte announced, taking charge of the moment with natural leadership. 1, 2, 3. The ribbon fell away as cheers erupted from the crowd. Red, white, and blue balloons were released into the clear sky, and the hospital's new pediatric wing was officially open. But more than that, a new chapter had begun for hundreds of families who would find hope and healing within those walls. The formal ceremony concluded and the crowd began to disperse. None of the Cambridge family members seemed ready to leave. They had found something authentic and meaningful in their connections with the hospital community, something that transcended their royal duties, and touched their hearts as parents and human beings. As the official ceremony concluded, the Cambridge family was invited to join a private reception with the hospital's major supporters, medical staff, and some of the families they had met throughout the day. The gathering took place in the hospital's new family center, a warm and welcoming space designed to provide comfort and respite for relatives of patients. Kate moved through the room with natural ease, stopping to speak with each group of people. Her genuine interest in their stories and her ability to remember personal details from their earlier conversations made everyone feel valued and heard. She spent several minutes with the parents of premature twins, listening intently as they described their emotional journey through the neonatal intensive care unit. William found himself in deep conversation with Dr. James Harrison, the hospital's head of pediatric surgery. The surgeon was explaining some of the groundbreaking procedures that would now be possible with the new equipment, and William's questions demonstrated his genuine understanding of the medical challenges involved. The operating theaters we toured today will allow us to perform surgeries that previously required sending children to facilities hundreds of miles away, Dr. Harrison explained. For families, that means being able to stay close to home during the most difficult time of their lives. Meanwhile, George had gravitated toward a group of older children who were patients at the hospital. Despite being a prince, he seemed most comfortable when he was simply being a 9-year-old boy, discussing football matches and video games, with kids who understood what it was like to face grown-up challenges at a young age. 10-year-old Marcus Williams, who was recovering from a serious heart condition, was initially shy about speaking with royalty. But George's easy manner and genuine interest in Marcus's collection of trading cards quickly broke down any barriers. "I have some cards you might like," George offered. "I could send them to you if you want. My protection officer is really good at posting things." The simple gesture meant the world to Marcus, who had been feeling isolated from his friends during his long hospital stay. The promise of mail from a real prince gave him something exciting to look forward to during his recovery. Charlotte had appointed herself as the official entertainer for the younger children at the reception. She had discovered a box of musical instruments in the family center and was leading an impromptu concert, teaching the other kids songs she had learned in her music lessons at home. "This one is called If You're Happy and You Know It," Charlotte announced with the authority of a seasoned performer. Everyone has to clap really loud. Even the children who were connected to medical equipment or sitting in wheelchairs joined in enthusiastically. Their laughter filled the room, creating a joyful atmosphere that seemed to lift everyone's spirits. Several nurses stopped their work to watch and smile at the spontaneous entertainment. Louis, still the youngest member of the family, had become fascinated with a therapy dog named Max, who was part of the hospital's comfort animal program. The golden retriever was specially trained to provide emotional support to young patients, and Louis's delighted giggles as he petted the gentle dog created perfect photo opportunities that captured the innocence and joy of childhood. Dr. Mitchell approached Kate during a quiet moment between conversations. "Your Royal Highness, I want you to know that your family's involvement in this project has made an immeasurable difference, not just in terms of funding and publicity, but in giving hope to families who desperately needed to see that people care about their children's welfare." Kate was deeply moved by the administrator's words. "Dr. Mitchell, I think you have it backwards. My family and I have learned so much from being here today. The strength and resilience we've witnessed have inspired us more than we could ever inspire others." As the reception continued, it became clear that meaningful connections were forming between the royal family and the hospital community. These weren't superficial interactions designed for media coverage. They were genuine relationships based on shared values and mutual respect. William spent time with the father of a teenage patient who had recently undergone a life-saving liver transplant. The man, a construction worker named David Peters, had been working extra shifts to pay for his family's expenses during his daughter's treatment. "The hardest part isn't the medical stuff," David confided to William. "It's feeling helpless when your child is suffering and there's nothing you can do to fix it." William nodded with understanding. "I can only imagine how difficult that must be. But from what I've seen today, you're doing everything right. Your daughter is lucky to have such a devoted father." The conversation continued for nearly 20 minutes, with William asking thoughtful questions about David's experience navigating the healthcare system and offering words of encouragement. By the end of their talk, David felt as though he had been speaking with a friend rather than a member of the royal family. George had discovered that several of the young patients were avid readers, and he was excitedly discussing his favorite books with them. His enthusiasm for adventure stories and mystery novels was infectious, and soon he was promising to create a book club that would include his new hospital friends. "We could meet once a month," George suggested. "Maybe we could even get some authors to come visit and talk about their stories." The idea delighted the children and impressed the adults who overheard the conversation. Here was a 9-year-old prince using his position not for personal gain, but to create opportunities for other children to experience joy and learning during challenging times. Charlotte had moved on from her musical performance to face painting, using washable markers to create colorful designs on willing volunteers. Her artistic skills were still developing, but her enthusiasm more than made up for any technical shortcomings. "This is a rainbow butterfly," she explained to 5-year-old Sophie Chen, carefully drawing on the little girl's cheek. "Butterflies are magic because they can fly anywhere they want, even when they start as little caterpillars." Sophie giggled with delight at the finished artwork, running to show her mother the colorful creation. For a child who had been dealing with the serious business of medical treatments, the simple act of having her face painted by a princess was pure magic. As the afternoon wore on, none of the Cambridge family members showed any signs of wanting to leave. They had discovered something precious in these interactions, a reminder of why their public service mattered and how much joy could be found in genuine human connections. The hospital staff began to realize that this wasn't just a successful royal visit. It was the beginning of a long-term relationship that would benefit the hospital and its patients for years to come. The Cambridge family had clearly been touched by their experiences, and their commitment to the hospital's mission appeared to be both sincere and lasting. As evening approached, the Cambridge family's visit to St. Mary's Children's Hospital was drawing to a close, but the impact of their presence would resonate for years to come. What had begun as a formal royal engagement had evolved into something far more meaningful, creating lasting memories and genuine connections that transcended protocol and ceremony. In the hospital's main lobby, a crowd of staff members had gathered to bid farewell to their royal visitors. Doctors still wearing their surgical scrubs stood alongside administrative staff, maintenance workers, and volunteers, all united in their appreciation for a family that had brought so much joy and hope to their workplace. Kate took a moment to address the assembled group, her voice filled with emotion as she reflected on the day's experiences. "When we arrived here this morning, we thought we were coming to open a new hospital wing, but we're leaving with so much more than we brought. You have opened our hearts to the incredible work being done here every day." She paused, looking around, at the faces before her, each one representing a person dedicated to healing and caring for children. "We have met heroes today, not just the brave young patients, but every single person who works to make their lives better. Nurses who work night shifts to comfort frightened children, doctors who perform miracles in operating rooms, janitors who keep everything clean and safe, and administrators who ensure that families never have to worry about anything except their child's recovery." William stepped forward, still carrying a now sleepy Louis who had finally succumbed to the excitement of the long day. "My family and I want to thank you for allowing us to be part of this special day. But more than that, we want to thank you for the work you do every day when there are no cameras or crowds watching." George, who had been unusually quiet for the past few minutes, suddenly spoke up. "Can we come back soon? I promised Marcus I would help him organize his trading cards, and I want to see if Emma feels better next week." His innocent question brought smiles to everyone in the room and highlighted the genuine connections that had been formed throughout the day. Charlotte nodded eagerly in agreement with her brother, adding, "And I want to finish teaching Sophie that butterfly song I was singing." Dr. Mitchell approached the family with a special gift, a photo album containing pictures taken throughout their visit. The images captured candid moments of interaction, laughter, and genuine emotion that perfectly documented the day's extraordinary events. "These pictures will remind us of a very special day," Dr. Mitchell said. But more importantly, they show what happens when people with platforms use them to spread love and hope. As Kate flipped through the album, she was struck by the joy visible in every photograph. There was George intently listening to a young patient's story, Charlotte dancing with children in the playroom, William carrying Louis while explaining medical equipment to curious onlookers, and countless images of genuine human connection. One photograph particularly caught her attention. It showed her kneeling beside the bed of a young boy who was receiving chemotherapy treatment. In the image, she was holding his hand while he showed her a drawing he had made of his family. The love and compassion in that moment had been captured perfectly by the photographer. "This one is my favorite," Kate said, showing the picture to William. "This is why we do this work." As the family prepared to leave, something unexpected happened. Emma Thompson, the 8-year-old cancer patient who had connected so deeply with Charlotte, appeared in the lobby with her parents. She was carrying a handmade card that she had spent the afternoon creating. "Princess Charlotte," Emma called out shyly. "I made this for you." Charlotte immediately went to Emma and accepted the card with the same grace she would have shown to a precious gift from a head of state. The card was decorated with glitter and stickers, and inside Emma had written in careful handwriting, "Thank you for being my friend. You made me feel beautiful today." Kate felt tears welling up in her eyes as she watched her daughter's reaction to the heartfelt gift. Charlotte hugged Emma tightly and whispered something in her ear that made the little girl giggle with delight. "I'm going to put this in my special treasure box at home," Charlotte announced. "It's the most beautiful card I've ever received." William was equally moved by the scene, recognizing that his children were learning lessons about compassion and service that couldn't be taught in any classroom. These were experiences that would shape their characters and influence how they approached their future roles in the royal family. As they walked toward the hospital's main entrance, patients and staff lined the corridors to wave goodbye. Younggu. Children pressed their faces against windows to catch a final glimpse of the royal family, while older patients called out words of thanks and appreciation. The sight of the crowds gathered outside took Kate's breath away. Despite the late hour, hundreds of people were still waiting, many holding homemade signs and flowers. Some had been there since early morning, determined not to miss the chance to see the Cambridge family. "Look at all those people," George observed, with wonder. "They waited all day just to see us." "No," William corrected gently. "They waited all day to show their support for this hospital and for all the children who need medical care. We're just representatives of something much bigger than ourselves." The lesson wasn't lost on any of the children. They had seen firsthand how their presence could bring joy and hope to others, but they had also learned that their role came with significant responsibility. As their car pulled up to the entrance, Kate took one last look at the hospital building, its windows glowing warmly in the evening light. Behind each of those windows were children fighting battles that most adults couldn't imagine, families holding vigil beside hospital beds, and medical professionals working tirelessly to save lives. Charlotte had fallen asleep against her mother's shoulder, still clutching Emma's handmade card. George was quietly looking out the window, clearly processing all the emotions and experiences of the day. Louis was finally napping peacefully in his father's arms, exhausted from all the excitement. "This has been one of the most meaningful days of my life," Kate whispered to William as they settled into their seats. "Mine too," he replied. "I think the children learned more about life and service today than they could have learned in months of formal instruction." As their convoy pulled away from St. Mary's Children's Hospital, the Cambridge family carried with them memories that would influence their approach to public service for years to come. They had discovered the profound joy that comes from using privilege to serve others, and they had witnessed firsthand the incredible strength and resilience of the human spirit in the face of adversity. 3 months after their unforgettable visit to St. Mary's Children's Hospital, the Cambridge family's commitment to the cause continued to grow stronger with each passing day. The experience had fundamentally changed how they approached their royal duties, transforming their understanding of what it meant to serve others and use their platform for meaningful change. Kate sat in her private study at Kensington Palace, surrounded by letters from families whose children had benefited from the new pediatric wing. Each envelope contained a story of hope, recovery, and gratitude that reinforced her belief in the importance of their work. One letter, written in crayon by a 7-year-old patient, simply said, "Thank you for making the hospital a happy place." The hospital visit had sparked a series of initiatives that extended far beyond that single day. Kate had established a monthly program where she would spend time with young patients, not as a formal royal engagement, but as a regular volunteer who happened to hold a royal title. Her natural warmth and genuine interest in the children's lives made her a beloved fixture at the hospital. William had become actively involved in fundraising efforts for pediatric medical research, using his military contacts and business connections to generate support for cutting-edge treatments. His personal investment in the cause was evident to everyone who worked with him, and his authentic passion inspired others to contribute their time and resources. The children had each found their own ways to continue their involvement with the hospital community. George had indeed started a monthly book club that included both hospital patients and children from local schools. The young prince had proven to be an excellent discussion leader, asking thoughtful questions and encouraging shy participants to share their opinions. Charlotte had become the unofficial morale booster for the hospital's youngest patients. Her monthly visits were eagerly anticipated by children who looked forward to her storytelling sessions, face-painting activities, and spontaneous dance parties in the playrooms. Her ability to bring joy to difficult situations was recognized by medical staff as genuinely therapeutic for their patients. Even Louis, despite his young age, had become a cherished presence at the hospital. His infectious laughter and natural curiosity brought smiles to everyone he encountered, from worried parents to overworked nurses who found renewed energy in his innocent joy. The impact of their continued involvement extended far beyond the walls of St. Mary's Hospital. Word of the Cambridge family's genuine commitment had spread throughout the medical community, inspiring other hospitals to implement similar family-centered programs. Medical professionals from around the world had reached out to learn about the approaches that were proving so successful in improving patient outcomes and family satisfaction. Dr. Mitchell often reflected on how much the hospital had changed since that memorable opening day. The royal family's ongoing involvement had attracted additional funding, enabled the recruitment of top medical talent, and created a culture of compassion that permeated every aspect of patient care. But more than the tangible benefits, their presence had brought something intangible yet invaluable: hope. Emma Thompson, the brave 8-year-old who had captured Charlotte's heart during their first meeting, had completed her cancer treatment successfully. Her recovery had been remarkable, and her doctors attributed part of her positive outcome to the emotional support and joy she had experienced during her time at the hospital. The friendship between Emma and Charlotte had continued to flourish, with regular video calls and letters that kept them connected between visits. On a crisp autumn afternoon, the Cambridge family returned to the hospital for what had become their quarterly comprehensive visit. Unlike their first formal appearance, these visits were relaxed affairs, where they could focus entirely on the relationships they had built with patients, families, and staff. Kate walked through the corridors with the familiarity of someone who truly belonged there. She stopped by the room of Maria Santos, a 12-year-old girl who was preparing for a complex surgery the following week. Maria's parents had been struggling with anxiety about the procedure, and Kate's presence provided the reassurance they desperately needed. "I brought you something special," Kate said, presenting Maria with a photograph of Charlotte wearing the friendship bracelet that Maria had made for her during a previous visit. "She wears it everywhere and tells everyone about her wonderful friend at the hospital." The simple gesture meant everything to Maria and her family. In that moment, they didn't see a duchess or a future queen. They saw a caring woman who had taken time from her busy life to remember a frightened child and offer comfort during a difficult time. William spent his afternoon in the hospital's new research wing, which had been expanded thanks to funding generated by their ongoing advocacy efforts. He met with scientists who were developing groundbreaking treatments for childhood diseases, asking detailed questions and offering encouragement for their vital work. Dr. James Harrison, the head of pediatric surgery, gave William a tour of the state-of-the-art operating theaters that had been installed since their first visit. "The procedures we can perform now were unimaginable just a year ago," Dr. Harrison explained. Children who would have faced months of travel for treatment can now receive world-class care close to home. George had arrived at the hospital with a backpack full of books that he had personally selected for the patient's library. His book club had grown to include children from several other hospitals in the region, all connected through video calls that allowed them to share their love of reading despite being separated by distance and medical treatments. The young prince spent time with Marcus Williams, whose heart condition had been successfully treated and who was now preparing to return to school. The friendship between the two boys had developed naturally, based on shared interests rather than royal protocol. "I'm going to miss coming to the hospital," Marcus admitted to George. "It sounds weird, but some of my best friends are here." "That doesn't sound weird at all," George replied with wisdom beyond his years. "The best friendships are made when people help each other through difficult times. You'll always have these connections, even when you're healthy and living your normal life again." Charlotte had brought her violin to the hospital and was preparing to give a small concert in the main playroom. Her musical skills had improved dramatically over the past few months, inspired partly by her desire to bring beautiful sounds to children who were dealing with the harsh realities of medical treatment. As she tuned her instrument, a small crowd gathered around her, including patients in wheelchairs, siblings of patients, and hospital staff who had taken short breaks from their duties. The impromptu audience represented the diverse community that had formed around the hospital's mission of healing and hope. "This song is called Amazing Grace," Charlotte announced. "My music teacher says it's about finding beauty even when things are difficult." As the familiar melody filled the room, something magical happened. Voices began to join in, creating a spontaneous choir that included everyone present. The harmony that emerged was imperfect but deeply moving, representing the unity and support that had become the hallmark of the hospital community. Kate and William, watching from the doorway with Louis in his father's arms, were overwhelmed by the scene before them. Their children, barely past toddlerhood when this journey began, had developed into compassionate young people who understood the power of service and the importance of using their privileges to help others. As the song concluded and applause filled the room, Kate realized that their lives had been forever changed by their involvement with St. Mary's Hospital. What had started as a single royal engagement had evolved into a calling that would define their family's approach to public service for generations to come. The evening concluded with a quiet dinner in the hospital's family center, where the Cambridge family shared a meal with several of the families they had come to know well. The conversation was relaxed and natural, filled with laughter and the kind of genuine connection that transcends social barriers. As they prepared to leave that night, Dr. Mitchell pulled Kate aside for a private conversation. "I want you to know that your family has transformed this place," she said, "not just through funding or publicity, but through the culture of compassion you've helped create. We measure our success differently now, focusing not just on medical outcomes but on the emotional well-being of our entire community." Kate was deeply moved by the administrator's words, recognizing that their involvement had been as transformative for her own family as it had been for the hospital. "Dr. Mitchell, I think you have it backwards once again. This hospital and these remarkable families have transformed us. We've learned what true courage looks like, and we've discovered that the greatest privilege in life is the opportunity to serve others." As their car pulled away from the hospital that night, the Cambridge family carried with them a profound sense of purpose and fulfillment. They had discovered that the most meaningful moments in life often come not from grand gestures or formal ceremonies, but from simple acts of kindness and genuine human connection. The lights of the hospital grew smaller in the distance, but the impact of their visit would continue to resonate through the corridors and patient rooms long after they had gone. Tomorrow would bring new challenges for the children and families within those walls, but they would face them with the knowledge that they were not alone, that somewhere in London, a royal family was thinking of them and working to ensure that every child had access to the hope and healing they deserved. The arrival that had stolen hearts had become a lasting commitment that would define the Cambridge family's legacy for years to come, proving that true royalty lies not in titles or crowns, but in the willingness to serve others with genuine love and unwavering dedication.